I don't know the identities of those communities, the names, the people who lived there, how they contributed to society. And that's so unfortunate that that'll end up being lost.
Oh, with so many people moving to the Queen City, a lot of people are not familiar with the history of Charlotte, and that is why we're here today. I'm Alicia Barnes, and I'm going to welcome you into our special program. It's called Local Roots, as we explore the history of Charlotte, and I have two amazing guests today just to be able to explain to us what's really going on here in the Queen City. Of course, that is Dr. Tom Hanchett, urban historian. Thank you so much for being here with us. And also we have Winston Robinson, who is the Applesauce Group founder and also the executive director there of Applesauce Group. Winston, did I get that right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
All right. But when we talk about Charlotte, for me, I've lived here 3-4 years. You run into people. Very few times do you find somebody who is from the city. So when you find somebody who's from Charlotte, you almost go, wow, talk to me about your history. And I really want to start with what's making the news now. We talk about the Excelsior Club. I think that we're now seeing this big push to see the Excelsior Club come back and just kind of have a rebirth. So if we want to start with Dr. Tom Hanchett, first to be able to explain to us, take us back to 1944 as to how this whole club started with Jimmy McGee.
Well, the Excelsior Club is near Johnson C. Smith University, historically black college on the west side of town. It's on Beatty's Ford Road, just off of Interstate 16, the expressway. And in the middle of the 20th century, at a time when segregation was really tough, African-American professionals could not go to the country club, so they built their own club. Jimmy McKee, somebody who I remember, I think Winston remembers him as well. Jimmy and Minnie McKee were real conveners in their neighborhood, found a big old house, started a club there, and then in the 50s renovated it in this really eye-catching art moderne architecture, and it is visually and socially a key part of West Charlotte.
Winston, what memories come to mind when you think about the Excelsior Club, or maybe even what your parents told you about it?
Yeah, for me, none, personally, because that was where my dad would hang out. I don't want to go there.
Okay.
However, as an adult, what I realized is this was like a public secret lair. This is where decisions were made. This is where things not only shifted the course of history, but from the context of let's go grab a drink. A lot of the people who were the members of those initial years were residents of McCrory Heights. That's a community literally across the street. So just imagine, and I know we often see history from a somber place.
Yeah.
But no, this is exciting. These are like West Side Avengers. Let's imagine the context of history makers, Charles Bell, Dr. Reginald Hawkins, Thomas White. Hey, man, let's grab a drink and shift the trajectory of America. That's what is important, the sentiment of the Excelsior. That's what's it's amazing.
Learning about the history of just knowing what this club means and how it came to be. Kind of take us through it, because I've heard that Duke Ellington performed here. You had just some of the greats that came through, but it was also the discussions people had at that time in history, too, that were important.
Well, you'd come in the front door. There was a big tropical fish tank to kind of get your attention out of the attention of the world and focus it there. The front room, what had been part of the old house, was a belly up to the bar. And you would find people who were movers and shakers. Winston was talking about some of the doctors, some of the physicians, people like Amory Rand, political leaders. Charlie Danley hung out there. The back room was a big space with a stage, and I can remember when B. Thompson, who was one of the pioneers on television here, would host the grown folks dances. They called them Dirty 30 Thursday, and I never went, so I'm not exactly sure why they called them that. But in terms of people coming together for pleasure, but also to change the world, as Winston Robinson said, the Excelsior Club was the place to be.
So, in terms of history, just for everybody to kind of understand, what period of time are we talking? I know it started in 1944.
So
What? Go ahead.
no, no, I would never.
Oh, well, 1944, you've got folks coming back from World War II. All of that energy, all of these well-trained, well-connected young men get married. There were a lot of bridge games. The bridge clubs were a thing, particularly for the women in that area. And the heyday lasted, I think, into the 1970s, something like that. When I came to Charlotte in 1981, the Excelsior Club was a little down on its heels. Jimmy McKee, Minnie McKee were becoming elderly. And would it continue? And I can remember the joy when Ken Kuntz, who was a key figure on television news, stepped forward with a couple other people to keep the club going in the 80s and the 90s. Eventually, James Ferguson, civil rights attorney, and his family took it up. But it is an old building, and it needs a lot of love. And so it's been closed for the last 4 years, something like that.
Winston, when people talk to you about the Excelsior Club and you want to tell people about the city that you grew up in, what's kind of like the one thing that you tell them about this club?
It encompasses everything. It is, again, when you the last question you asked, the Excelsior is multiple experiences for multiple people through multiple generations, but all impactful. So again, the experience that Jimmy McKee and again Dr. Reginald Hawkins may have had as a city club could be a lot different from what Khalif Rhodes experienced as a younger person. Mm. However, if you ask them about maybe the networking or the people met during that time, it would be as significant. So again, just because the feel of what to expect from it changed doesn't mean the impact was shifted, because it's always been impactful.
What are your thoughts about now it making a rebirth and making a comeback?
Again, I'm looking for the sentiment, the idea of what the Excelsior was, that space to spark imagination, creativity, and how to come together to do good stuff. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're going to continue with Local Roots coming up. For right now, we're going to take a quick break, but next we're going to talk about the unforgotten neighborhoods here in the Charlotte community. And we're back with Local Roots, and we're talking about the history of Charlotte, and I have two special guests, Dr. Tom Hanchett, and we also have Winston Robinson with us, who is from Charlotte, grew up, born, raised right here. And both of you just know so much about Charlotte history. And one of the things, Winston, when we talk about the Queen City, there are a lot of forgotten neighborhoods. And I really want to talk about, we hear so much about the Brooklyn Village, the Brooklyn neighborhood. First, tell us, what is it called? What is it referred to? What do people need to know about the area?
Well, I believe Brooklyn Village is the newer rendition that is looking to be developed, and that's an entirely different show in itself. Mm-hmm. But Brooklyn is what was. Brooklyn is the beautiful buildings that we see on the screen. Brooklyn was an entire community that was the epicenter of commerce in Black Charlotte. So that was the epicenter of community. One of the larger gathering things or spaces was the Queen City Classic, where Second Ward would play West Charlotte. Mm-hmm. House of Prayer having convocation, tens of thousands of people amassing to, again, just gather in this space that was a city within a city.
What time period are we talking? Like what
the Brooklyn thing starts in the 1890s.
Okay.
That's a time when segregation is getting really ugly in the South, in Charlotte. And African Americans are barred from living in most of the new suburbs. And so a city within a city in the center of town, that's what we're going to go for. And at that point, Brooklyn, New York was coming into New York City as a borough, kind of a city within a city. So they picked that proud name. It was where the Afro-American Mutual Insurance Company had its offices. It was where the AME Zion Publishing House, which published the materials for that whole religion worldwide, was where the leading schools were. The elementary school, Meyer Street School, the high school, Second Ward High School. People gravitated toward the Brooklyn neighborhood from the early 20th century until urban renewal in the 1960s.
Before we talk about urban renewal, what area are we talking about? So when people come into Charlotte, they know exactly, okay, this is the Brooklyn Village, now called Brooklyn Village, but back then called Brooklyn.
Big bunch of territory. Charlotte in the 1850s, 1860s divided itself into 4 election districts, 4 wards within what's now the I-277 loop. And the second ward is where Brooklyn got to be. It's everything from Trade and Tryon Street all the way out past Interstate 277 out to where the new medical college is. The government center is in that land. The aquatic center is in that land. The NASCAR Hall of Fame is in that land.
Okay.
And all of that was a bustling place for the first 2/3 of the 20th century.
And then we had urban renewal. And what exactly does that mean, and what dates are we talking about? Is that the 60s and 70s?
Indeed. There's federal money starting in the 50s to clear the slums, and there's no requirement to ask people who are actually in those neighborhoods whether they like that idea or not. Brooklyn all demolished, 1,000 families displaced, 200 businesses closed, most never reopened. Dozen churches kicked out. It is a wrenching piece of history here in Charlotte, but actually the same thing happened in every American city, and we're in some ways still trying to recover from that.
Winston, kind of take me through your lens. What did you learn? What did you learn about this area? What are the stories that you want people to be able to know here who aren't from Charlotte?
Well, more than anything, the main thoroughfare, I believe, was McDowell Street, right? And it's really a conversation of what was lost. With urban renewal, what does it do to a black family that owned a home on the corner of McDowell and Trade, or McDowell and, at the time, 2nd Street?
What does that mean? What do you mean when you say
the wealth component? Now that you've been displaced from this property you own and moved elsewhere, what is the injury gap? What is the value lost in what could have been nurtured and grown, and with your wealth value rising, and what was lost in being forced to move from that area?
There's so much focus on Brooklyn. Are there other neighborhoods in that area that you feel like are forgotten or people need to know about?
Well, the Brooklyn neighborhood was the largest one that was demolished with urban renewal.
Okay.
Parts of what's now South End were demolished. An entire neighborhood known as Greenville up on Statesville Road, Oaklawn Avenue, near where Camp North End is today, that was demolished as well. And what Winston's saying is this intergenerational wealth, the ability to pass down your family's house, your family's business. People got a little token payment through eminent domain, but basically it creates a wealth gap, which is still with us today.
What do you think people need to know? As you're driving through the area, when you explain the second ward, I immediately knew what you're talking about. When you say the NASCAR Hall of Fame and you look around, you see these buildings here, what's kind of the takeaway as people move into the city that they should just know about the history?
Well, I'm glad to hear, to see that the name of Stonewall Street, which goes through that area, named for Stonewall Jackson, the Confederate general, Mayor Vi Lyles and a group of citizens changed that name to Brooklyn Village recently. The folks at the county are working with a number of developers to redevelop about 6 blocks of that area that is largely still vacant from that demolition in the 1960s.
Oh, wow.
That's where the Brooklyn Village name comes from. It's a place where, if you look back, there was some powerful history, and there is history to be made today.
Winston, any thoughts, any stories that you remember about the area or just that you learned through the years?
Yeah, I think one is super important to me is, again, my father growing up here, while we give the acclaim and we give the attention to Brooklyn, there were the smaller neighborhoods that didn't have as much of the, the prestige that would just be lost. Blue Heaven was beside Brooklyn. That's a neighborhood where my father put it. That's where you go hang out. Have a good time,
right.
if you will. But we don't hear much about Blue Heaven. We don't hear much about it's not Southside Homes, but Southside, across the street from Southside Homes, where Piedmont Supermarket was, or Paw Creek, or where the area where the airport is. It's Dixie. There's so many communities that were lost. I remember, quick story. I went to a skeet shooting fundraiser way out in Waxhaw, and on my way down Providence Road, I just remember seeing like 3 or 4 AME churches just isolated amongst multi-million-dollar homes. And of course, communities are built around churches, or churches are built for communities. And that is the last standing marker of what was. So how many, every time I saw a church, it was a reminder, there was a Black community once here in this space. And I don't know the identities of those communities, the names, the people who lived there, how they contributed to society. And that's so unfortunate that that'll end up being lost.
Dr. Hanchett, any stories that you can think of that you think is important for people to know? I think this is just so fun because as you drive around Charlotte now, I'm hoping that this helps people kind of connect the dots a little.
There are some wonderful photographs online through the Carolina room of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. There was a Black library, the first one in North Carolina, that was in the middle of that neighborhood. Right next to it was the Alexander Funeral Home. And if you know Charlotte history, that name should ring a bell. Zach Alexander started that around the turn of the last century. His sons carried it on. One of his sons, Fred Alexander, was the first African-American on city council in the 20th century. His grandson, Kelly Alexander Jr., just passed away recently, still running the Alexander Funeral Home, not on the original site. But in his latter decades, he was our representative in Raleigh. So lots of local history, lots of local fellowship and camaraderie, but also impact far away from Charlotte. The Alexander family, Kelly Alexander Sr., the statewide president of the NAACP for decades.
Well, as we take a break right now, we're going to come back. We have to talk about here in Charlotte how it became a banking boom and just what it means of the banking industry here in the Queen City. So we're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be back in a couple minutes. Welcome back. I'm Alicia Barnes, and you are watching Local Roots as we talk about Charlotte history. And one thing about Charlotte is you can tell if you just drive around uptown, we've got a lot of banks here. We are the financial hub in the banking history. So let's talk about it now. Dr. Hanchett, you were giving us some history about the area that we're seeing there in the different wards in the uptown area, but specifically the banking industry. How did that come about here?
A long tale that got us to where we are today, second biggest banking hub in the United States, starts with textile mills. Charlotte's growth in the 20th century came because we were the trading city for a whole region of textile mills, not just close to home, but far away into upstate South Carolina. And out of that came banks that were good at running branch systems. And in the 1980s, Hugh McCall, who headed what had been recently known as North Carolina National Bank, NCNB, renamed it Nations Bank and went looking for a bank he could buy out of state. There were a lot of laws in the United States dating back to the Depression that made that a difficult thing to do, but Hugh McCall figured it out, bought a bank in Lake City, Florida, and the laws started to change. Down the street, his rival, Ed Crutchfield, at what was then First Union, started buying banks as well, and you kind of had this golden rivalry until McCall bought Bank of America out of San Francisco, moved it to Charlotte, built the tallest building on our skyline, and the rest is history.
Wow. Winston, being here, growing up here, take us through what it was like just to see all these changes. I mean, I'm from Atlanta, and every time I go home, I'm just like, whoa. And I'm just wondering if you get that same feeling here, I mean, I know what Charlotte looked like 20 years ago because I would come through here, and it doesn't look the way it does 20 years ago.
Absolutely. I've seen it in real time. So I'm 44, and this is my third.
Hey, we're not discussing age here. Go ahead.
But this is my third iteration of Charlotte. Growing up, I remember as a younger kid, grandparents working in the few textile mills that remained in Charlotte, hearing the stories of that textile work. And it wasn't everybody, but again, it was enough for me to kind of pick up a pattern.
Okay.
I remember the fathers working in something based in the trucking or transport industry. Pate Dawson, Allison Irvin, all these kind of jobs that felt similar. I'm a kid, so the context just kind of matched. And then I know this new Charlotte. I remember being in high school at Myers Park and seeing black kids coming from a community called Providence Square, and they were all transplants from New York or Maryland, and it was the weirdest thing to me that an entire community of kids were not from the same place. They all transplanted there. So that was my introduction to what I can now put together as the banking growth. But to see this in real time is quite a sight to see. To go away for college for a couple years, then come back to traffic that has tripled. It's mind blowing. It is mind. And again, I don't want to take too much time here, but
all time, and we won't here to learn. We're fine.
And I'm gonna tell you why Charlotte is so fascinating.
I brought you here, Winston.
I appreciate that.
This.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That makes me feel good. But my career was in experiential marketing, so I had to travel a lot across the country, and you could feel how a city is aligned with just kind of the person who had the money there. If you go to Pittsburgh has felt like Pittsburgh for 100 years, and the imprint of Andrew Carnegie is all over it. You go to New York, Rockefeller. You go to, you name it, the Vanderbilts. You can just find where they put most of their money or their impressions on the city. The thing is about Charlotte, I saw our Carnegie at Harris Teeter on Providence Road about a month ago, driving himself in Hugh McCall. That guy that Dr. Hanchett just told us figured out the way to make Charlotte what it is. Wow. He's still alive and hanging out. So what does that mean for us? The clay's still wet. So this is duty. We have to make the city that is, and keep up with the growth because we can't lose it. We have to make sure people know these stories, understand these narratives. Charlotte has been here. The growth is new, but the culture, the stories, no. You got to know these. You got to have that context. That's important.
Context is very important. Dr. Hanchett, as we start to close out this just episode of Local Roots right here, and we talk about the banking industry, what are kind of your final thoughts in terms of what Winston just laid out? You know, what he saw as a kid growing up, what it's changed to now, your final thoughts of what you want people to know as you kind of connect those dots.
Used to be that most of the folks who came to Charlotte were from the South. Now they're from all over the globe. Mecklenburg County, 1990, had 500,000 people. It hit 1 million in 2015. Today it's up to 1.3,
wow,
something like that. Wow. And we are now I believe, 14th or 15th largest city in the United States. In the 90s, we were at number 35. And so this is a city that's trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. It's a city with a welcoming attitude towards newcomers, by and large. And it is a city where, like Winston Robinson said, the clay is still wet.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it. There's so many stories that we hope to tell here on Local Roots. Just exploring the history of Charlotte. I know there's a lot of topics that we have to be able to come. Winston, any last thoughts from you?
Listen, you can come feel that all of that context, all of that sentiment, all of that Charlotte history come through you at a Vibe Called Fresh, our festival that happens on September 20th at West Complex, 1600 West Trade Street. We are featuring the first annual Mashup Madness, which is a mashup competition between 3 DJs, and it will be incredible.
And you have a belt, right? You bring the belt. I got to see this.
The champion will be awarded. Look at that. That's the West Side champion of the world. And look at this. Look at the inscription, the Betas Ford, the Lion Bull hybrid with the West. Come on, this is 7 pounds of the finest affordable zinc and faux alligator. So yes,
I love it.
One of our DJs will be awarded this championship belt.
And this plays off a history we got to talk about at some point, which is the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Which has now moved to other areas, but man, back in the day.
Yes.
That is a great way to be able to tease you to our next episode. Thank you so much for being here on Local Roots. Winston Robinson, Dr. Hanchett, I just appreciate your time. And hopefully you enjoyed this segment of what we're doing here, just kind of teaching a little bit of Charlotte history, one episode at a time. Thanks so much for watching Queen City News Plus.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.